What's up, everybody? It is almost time to start thinking about swarm traps. A good indicator that honeybee swarm season is right around the corner is when the dandelions start to bloom. We do have a few weeks of intermittent weather here up in Michigan for the next little while before we really get to that point, but it is a good idea to start thinking about it because it is very heavily weather dependent. A whole bunch of places that I've seen in the south so far are getting an early spring. So we may get an early spring up here this year. It may be wet and muddy for a while. I'm not sure. However, there are a few big main questions that I do get quite a lot, and I'm going to answer those for you guys today to try to kind of help some people out, especially first and second year beekeepers who want to try to put out swarm traps either to catch feral swarms or to catch any swarms from their property if their hives split and swarm before they can get to them. A big question that I always get is how far should I put my swarm traps, or how close is too close? There's really no specific good answer for that. It all depends on the queen, how far she flies, where she feels like going. Um, she could just go this way just because and completely miss your swarm traps for a little while. They could fly out somewhere, land for a bit, send out some scouts, find your swarm trap, and then go to your swarm trap. There's a whole bunch of different behavior that goes on there. But in terms of distance, it doesn't particularly matter. I kind of space mine out in intervals. I've got some within about 10-15 feet of some hives, and then I have some spaced out a little bit further. I got one in most of my hives. I've got them on average uh, about 10-15 feet. Another, if I can, if I have space or permission from different landowners, to put one about 100 to 200 feet away, and then a couple acres away if I can. Because, like I said, they may swarm and go immediately up to a branch or somewhere right close by. They may swarm and you can find them on the other side of your farm. You can find them a few houses down at your neighbors. It's it really depends. So I space mine out just to try to catch them at those different intervals. So um, with swarm traps, do you have to go by an official swarm box? Not particularly. I've done a video before where I showed you how to put together an easy nuke. A lot of times I'll use easy nukes as swarm traps. You can use old mating nukes as swarm traps. You can take a regular full brood box, cut it in half, cut it down to size, make that a brood box. As long as you have a top and bottom on it, a lid, it it's pretty simple, pretty easy. Um, I do know. Last I checked, it's been a little while, but last I checked, I think swarm traps were going wooden swarm traps of your basic, either pine or plywood construction were about $45 or so, and they can go up from there depending on the wood and the quality. If you go ahead and make it yourself, you can make one for probably 15 or $20, um, depending on what wood you have either laying around or if you go to a hardware store. So it's quite a bit cheaper, about half the price or so. Um, yeah, it all depends. It really just depends on the time that you want to put into it and whatnot. So um, with that, you can put frames in it if you want to. I have frames in all of my swarm traps because it just makes it a lot easier. It gives the bees something to build on, and if there's a swarm trap that I can't get to for a few weeks or for a little while, if they do go ahead and build in there, it's not a big mess for me to clean up later, and I can reuse that comb. I can transfer them right with that comb to their new hive, to the hive that I put them in. So it makes things a lot easier. Um, the distance one and the construction materials one are two of the biggest questions that I get around swarm season time. And then with swarm lures, um, the most basic bare minimum that you need for a swarm lure is lemongrass or lemongrass oil. You can get that at pretty much any grocery store, any health food store. A lot of candle places will even have it because they use them as essential oils. So lemongrass oil is a really good basic rule of thumb is to use that. And you can even plant the actual lemongrass plant itself around your property, and that'll help draw bees and other wildlife in. So the swarm lure that I use is a mixture of the lemongrass oil, beeswax, and a little bit of olive oil to kind of soften it up a little bit and make it more pliable. A lot of times I will coat plastic cell frames. I'll kind of paint it onto there and kind of coat it with that so they incorporate it and build it out into the wax and the frames as they use it. Another way you can do it is if you make a smaller batch to just kind of dab some on a cotton ball or even rub it on the back wall of the hive itself. Kind of smear it on the back wall. That works just as well. Simple, easy. Again, you can buy swarm lures in really small amounts for like $5 or $10, in bigger amounts for like $30, $35. Or you can go ahead and make it, buy all the stuff at any health food store, make it for pennies on the dollar. So, and then scale it up again as you need. I've posted another video quite recently on on how I make my swarm lure, and you can check that out too. I'll try to get a link or whatnot and connect these videos together, so you can just go from one to the other. But those are the three main things that I get asked a lot about for swarm season, and it is coming up. Again, it's very weather dependent, so if you want to go ahead and be prepared, when you do make your swarm lure, keep it in an airtight container, preferably at room temperature or cooler. You don't really want it super liquidy, or else it'll kind of separate again over time. So those are a few things to think about, and if you have any other questions, definitely let me know.